Welcome back. Automakers back on Capitol Hill today looking for that bailout. Once again, politicians on a spending spree lecturing an industry that so far has been losing billions. But one guy who isn't there is raising some eyebrows. He's the one guy who probably should have been, because Ron Paul skipped today's hearing. He kind of walks the walk when it comes to cracking down on this sort of stuff. The Republican congressman, former presidential candidate, joins me right now on the phone. Congressman, why weren't you there?
Well, it was a matter of time and time preference. It was a long way to get 3 minutes of questioning in, and since I know all the answers that they're going to give me, they're not going to really entertain a serious approach to what we ought to be doing. So,
well, since when do you guys ever limit yourselves to that 3 minutes?
Barney Frank is pretty good at that. That's
okay.
One thing, it was pretty good, and if you want to get a couple answers, and he cuts them off, so I would get 1 or 2 minutes of questioning and 3 minutes of answers, and we weren't in session this week. So it was a decision I made. I had other things scheduled. This hasn't been on for very long, but it was my decision to make that it wasn't going to be very productive use of time, because what are they going to say if I challenge them from the free market? They don't even know what the free market is all about. I mean, it's a matter of all they're doing right now is deciding how much money and where it's going to come from. I don't think there's any doubt, though, they'll get some money, and then they want to talk about who's going to be the managers. Is Congress a better manager than the people in the car companies? That's
we're going to talk to your colleague, Bill Pascrell of New Jersey, about that very issue. But I did want to touch on something that Carl Icahn, the investment billionaire, talked with me earlier in the show, Congressman.
Okay.
And that was, and he's Mr. Free Market, right? He says, I know, but hear me out. He's saying that things are so bad now that if you ignore a bailout in this environment, you're going to make things much, much worse. What do you make of that?
Well, I disagree, because if you put a couple $1 trillion into the market and these billions into the car company and they fail, then you've compounded our problems. And there's no good reason to believe that this is going to solve the problem. So, yes, it's a disaster not to bail them out, but it's bigger if you spend the money and then they still fail.
I think he was arguing you stave off something and give them time to correct things. You don't buy that.
No, I don't, because there's no good evidence of that, because what you want to do is get rid of the bad debt, and this just prolongs the agony. Even if it did work, let's say it did work over a period of time of 3 or 4 or 5 years, it still would be agonizing because it took too long. The same way in housing, you want your prices of houses to drop quickly, and you want the bad assets wiped off so we can go back to work. But if you prolong the correction, this is painful to everybody. It costs a lot more money. Okay. So it isn't that it can't possibly work, but there's always a cost. There's a cost in time, but there's a cost in taking the money from one segment of the economy and putting into another. They're doing credit allocation, and Congress is not smart enough to do this, and this just makes our problems that much worse.
Congressman, thank you very much.
Thank you.
No bailout, but a very